Okay, setting up a mural cut for the mural project. We'll go ahead and create a new file and set up our X and Y. So our X-axis is going to be 96 and our Y-axis is 48. Thickness is 1/2 of an inch. As they come down, our 0 position is the material surface. The datum position, our X and Y, is this bottom corner with 0 offset, no offsets involved. And then we'll come down and hit OK. So now that I have my stock, I'm ready to start bringing my EPS image in. It has already been sized in Photoshop and vectored in, turned into an EPS in Illustrator. Okay, once you have your stock set, we can now start bringing the EPS file in. We go to File, Import. We want to import vectors. And then we go find the information. So I'm going to go to the Senior Lounge. This is on the TechEd server, the Be Here file. And then I'm looking in the EPS files. So I want to get the file, 2 files actually that I'm going to want is the file it's meeting up to and then the file that I want to cut. So I'm going to bring in the file that it's going to meet up to first. And you can do it however you want to do it. Either one, it's not a problem. I bring it in, I then select the file, okay, so that I get my little move tool that pops up. And then I move the file off of the import area. That way I can go back into File, Import Vectors, and then go get the one I want to cut. So I'm going to be cutting this one, line 4. The vector comes in. And now what I need to do is rotate this vector. I'll also need to rotate this one. So to do that, all right, I just make sure it's highlighted. I then go ahead and select the image. And then any one of these little corner solid boxes, if you sit over top of them, they turn into the rotate tool. So all I have to do is hold down my left mouse, move my mouse, okay, and then I'm going to physically type in 90 and hit enter while I'm holding down my left mouse button and then hit enter. That rotates your part, okay? Now, I actually wanted to go all the way around again, so I'm going to take and do this again. I'm going to highlight, or I'm going to hold down my left mouse, grabbing that rotation, and I'm going to go all the way around. I'm going to type in 180 and hit enter. Now, this is the orientation that I have been laying out the parts in, so that the letters are cutting on the CNC in the correct orientation. I've just been doing it this way. This is the way that I've been keeping it and straight in my head. I'm going to move this over so it's away from this other piece of geometry. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'll change this one because I got to turn this thing around. So I'll just go ahead and turn it. I'll do the same exact operation again. That's 90. I'll flip it around again. This is 180. So they're in the correct orientation. This E should match up with this E here. Okay. All right, so the next thing I want to do is start setting up the positioning points down here in our corner for our offsets and our sheets. So this is where I want to start talking about layers. Over here in the left side of the screen, you can see that there's different tabs. There's a drawing tab, there's a modeling tab, that's for 3D modeling work, clip art, and then layers. So click on the layer tab. And you can see that these images are actually coming in on layers. So this import Be Here line 3, if I turn off the light bulb, it disappears. Okay? This works just like layers in AutoCAD. If I turn off the other one, that disappears. So what I want to do is I want to put my positioning lines on a new layer. All right? So I'm going to click Add New Layer at the bottom of the layer dialog. It pops up Layer 2. And I'm just going to put this and call this, offset. Okay, because that's what I'm doing is I'm setting up an offset from my XY0. And I'm going to change the color. So I click on the little color button, and I'm going to come down, and I'm just going to grab, say, blue. Okay, so I have blue color, or an aqua color, whatever you want to call it, and then an offset. Now, when it's bolded, that's the layer that's active, okay? So when it's bolded and it's a little highlight, it's active. So when I go back to my drawing bar and I grab my line tool, I'm going to come down to my X000. I'm going to click and start dragging a line up. Now, to center the sheet in the Y-axis, we have got a 47.5 size sheet, and we have a 48 size stock. I can come up and push this thing up by 0.25, and I type that in on my computer and hit enter. That has given me a little teeny tiny line down here that is 0.25 long. Okay? So with my little 0.25 line, and it's actually that aquamarine color, I'm now going to go ahead and grab another line. I'm going to go to the end of that little aquamarine line, and this time I'm going to draw in this direction, and I'm going to draw this way 6.25. Now, this is really in relation to the sheet size that I'm working with to lay this out. If your particular sheet size is slightly different, then you need to just make sure you're centering stuff up. For us, this was 47.5, and they all should be 47.5 in height. Now, the length should also be very similar. If it's slightly smaller, that's fine. This offset would still work. Okay? Then we're simply going to take and highlight all the vectored image. And then I'm going to click on it to get my Move tab, go to the corner, click, and come down to the end of my blue line. And the O snaps or the object snaps are a little different than what you see in AutoCAD or other programs. You just get close, it finds it, and you can position it. Okay? So then that would be the proper positioning on my stock. You can zoom in and see that over on the top of the stock, I have a small gap. At the bottom, I have a gap. And then, of course, at the top and the bottom, I have gaps also for stock. This is where our clamps will end up, at the top and the bottom. Okay, with other mural sizes, just the Be Kind is larger. I think the Be Kind is, was it 96? Okay, so Be Kind is 93.7. You're not going to get a 6.25 line here. So for Be Kind, this line is probably going to be about 1.5 inches. Okay, so your offset will change depending upon what project you're working on. So make sure you have that tidied and set. After you do set these in position, then what you will do is you're going to take the panel that it meets up with, and then you'll select that panel and grab it from a piece of geometry that it's going to match up with. So here, I'm grabbing it from where the E is going to match up with the E, and I want to take and move it over to where the E should actually match up with this part. Okay, so I'm finding that location. I'm going to drag it over, get it closer, and then I start zooming in, and I'm going to take it by that location again, and then take it and then lock it onto the mating panel. You should then be able to scroll up or down and see how this is going to hook up. Does the circle hook up okay? Do the rest of the lines line up? Because that's important to make sure that all this stuff lines up. Here's this arrow. Is this arrow lining up properly so that this fits? Once you align the images, you then have to come back and look at the relationship of the sheets to each other and the image. So the top of the image and the final cut is not lining up together. But we need to work with the image lining up so it works, and then we need to look at what was cut previously. So this is the line that was cut previously with the HE. We need to then adjust the final cut profile for this image. We also need to change this geometry because we can't engrave a line across this when the bottom of the sheet needs to be down here. So what we'll need to do is we're going to have to draw a new outside profile that's based off of the profile that will match up to the other object. So to do this, we're going to go ahead and we're going to grab a new layer, and I'm just going to call this profile, because I know that's what it's going to be. And I'm going to change the color. I'm going to make this red so it's really easy to see. And then what I want to do is go back to my drawing, grab my rectangle tool, and I want to put in here the distances that I need. Well, my distance here for this cut is 83.125. That's my length. And then, of course, 47.5 is my height. That's how big my sheet is. I'm just going to go ahead and drop the rectangle over here and then hit close. That then allows me to take my rectangle and move it over to the old corner point for the mating sheet. This is going to become the new profile location for my new cut. Now I need to go in and start cleaning up the geometry. And that's where I go in and I start using my cut tool. So I'll go and grab my cut tool. I will cut this line out of here. I'm going to come up here. I can trim off this geometry. I can start trimming the rest of the geometry that I'm not going to use, and then start using this as my new geometry for my sheet. Okay, so now that I have that geometry trimmed up, if I go in and turn off that profile line, you can see that I've got some stuff that's going to be missing in the engraving. But that's okay, because it's also going to engrave the profile line, and it'll clean that up. So I now need to take and get this particular object away from my ER so I can start tooling it. So I'm going to just go in and I'm going to turn off my ER. I'm also going to turn off the profile. Then I can easily do a panning window. I can select the object and just pull it away from my cut. Then I can go back and turn the B here back on. I can turn the profile back on. And now I can go ahead and start setting up my toolpaths for the cut. So with the toolpath operations open, I'm going to grab the profile toolpath. As I come down my 2D toolpath information, you can see my start depth is 0. My cut depth is 0.0625. That's for the engraving. Using the 1/8 inch end mill, path depth is a 1/16 of an inch also, and my feed rate, spindle speed 13,000 RPMs at 105 inches per minute. So this is all set right. This is looking good. As I come down, my machine vector is compensated for on the line, so it's going to run right over top. No separate last pass, no tabs, no ramps, and now I'm ready to highlight my geometry. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is just highlight the geometry here. I've grabbed the geometry. Now the only problem is I also have my little offset down here. So I'm going to go ahead and look at getting rid of that. I'm not going to go shifting the sheet around because I still have enough space here to put my clamps and should be good to go. All right, so with that set, we'll just go back in. We're going to highlight the geometry that I want to tool and hit calculate. I have duplicated vectors. It's going to ignore them. That's wonderful. Then I can take a look to see, well, what's this going to look like? So let's run that. And there's the engraving. It's going to run around the outside. It's going to come up and around. That's good. So now the next thing we need to do, we need to dive back in, and we need to cut the profile for the cutout. So again, I'm going to grab my profile tool. This time my cut depth is going to be 0.5 because we're cutting down the entire sheet. Still using the same information on the bit. Pass depth is a 1/16. Feed rate's 105. On the line, so I'm not changing anything. This time, though, we need tabs. So I want to have tabs here that get set up, and I want my tabs to be slightly thicker. We'll make this, go ahead and we'll make this like 0.25 in length and an 1/8 inch thick. I'm going to then position my tabs, so I need to select my vector. I'll grab my edit tabs, and I'm going to put 3 tabs at the end of this sheet, like this, and I'll go ahead and put 3 tabs at the end of the sheet. This holds this piece of material down after the last cut goes around. This center panel will not come flying out. So I just want to come in and verify that I've got tabs. Yep, my tabs are showing up. A little difficult to see in a big sheet, but they are there. And I'm now ready to save the cut as a Shopbot cut file and then head to the CNC machine.